Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming by. We've got another exciting session for you here. If you joined us on our first session, welcome back. If this is your first time joining us, welcome. We are in session 2 of a 4-part series on work transformation, calling it the Work Transformation Crash Course. We're really excited about this. If you haven't watched the first session, I suggest you go back and check out that recording as we'll kind of continue the conversation here. By the way, my name is Chris. I'm one of the hosts today. This is one of my favorite types of projects, is going Google and going all in and figuring stuff out. How do we run our business on Google Workspace and reduce our cost or increase collaboration on a singular platform so that we don't have a bunch of different tools. I'm joined today by Kristen and John. Kristen, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Kristen Kopstil again. Super excited to be here. I loved our topic last week on the history of how we got here. But I'm most excited about this week because we talk about some critical components of work transformation. I've been at SADA for about 8 years in January, and these are also some of my favorite types of projects. I work closely with Chris and Jonathan. Jonathan, want to say hey?
Sure. Jonathan Kyneth, Senior Transformation Engineer here at SADA. I've been here for 3 years. Work on these projects and get into some of the more detailed use cases around sheets and scripts and AppSheet and databases and all that good stuff.
Awesome. So a bit about our agenda today, and then I'll pass it over to John or Kristen. But the agenda today, we're going to talk about, hey, data-driven approach. Everybody likes data-driven decisions. It's the way to go. We want to make sure that the decisions we're making are grounded in that data. And so how do we do that? What are the tools that we use? How do we gather the data in order to make decisions? We've got a lot of great things to discuss there. Kristen's going to take us through some information on critical data strategy and how that fits into work transformation. The three of us will talk through some customer examples of what we've seen and what has worked and what hasn't worked over time. And then we'll wrap up with what's next. So with that, who can I pass it over to, John or Kristen here?
Kristen will start it. All right. Well, first, we're going to talk about that data-driven approach. And we created what we call the Nexus Trace. We thought this was a perfect name for, one, the central connection point of tracing all of your different licenses between license and use case. So the history behind that a little bit, as it says clearly here, a data wrangling journey. Generally, most people start wanting to remove licenses in some sort of sheet. You try to track users and then their license and use cases. Breaking down those user lists for use cases, we would first attempt to send this out to different department leads to say, hey, review your people. And we would break that out per sheet and then have to bring it all back into one to then review. So all those different connectors caused a bit of some problems, and it was difficult to see that comprehensive view quickly. And the data was ultimately scattered in those different sheets. You can do it, not to say that you cannot, because we did it. But we found that Sheets just was not the right tool. Sheets is not meant to operate as a database by any means. Because of those connected sheets and the volume of data, a lot of the dashboards we attempted to create just simply wouldn't load. It would take significant time to do so. So we knew there had to be a better solution to this. And that's where Jonathan came in to provide us one. So we'll talk through what that looks like.
I would also say on this note, just before we move on, some of the other challenges we see in Sheets, right? So Kristen mentioned you want to have your list of users and what licenses they have and who's licensed and who's going to be in what wave. But then you start to pair that data with things like, well, what about usage data? There are various tools that measure Microsoft usage data and how much is each person using. And then you divide that list and group it into business unit or by director or VP. Like you start to splice and dice this data in different ways as you would with a database. But if you've got 50,000 employees or even 3,300 employees, this can get messy inside of a Google Sheet. And then, hey, if all goes well, that's fantastic. Then you might run into an org change where, hey, some employees might change over to a different division. They might change over to a different leader. They might, all these different little nuances, which you start off with like, hey, this sheet is manageable. I'm keeping track of it. But then one of these shifts happens and it just kind of throws a wrench in things. So just a little bit of the history of what we've seen challenging wise with Google Sheets and why we are very grateful that John was able to help us build a better solution that we're calling Nexus Trace.
Yeah, so the tool we built on top of AppSheet, which was one of the tools that we present as a solution for other use cases in Workspace. So we use one of our tools to do that. This tool brings all that data together. It allows us to work with all the different lists provided by multiple users. Users can look at data specific to them. They don't have to, like those sheets that we split out to go to individual users. It's still one place. They're just contacted. Everyone gets to go to the same place, live data. The summaries are all built in, tied together there. It becomes the central location for tracking these use cases, specific Microsoft tools associated with that use case. We can break things down by essentially what type of license someone may need, and those sort of things. It is definitely provides more visibility into the data driving those decisions. The dashboard can be set up to be accessible by the project team, by leadership, by and even down to individual users, if you want to let them see what the status is of their particular use case. Some additional benefits is mentioned to us as users have used this tool we built for them. It becomes a one-stop shop. There's not multiple sheets here, there, and everywhere. They're just one place to get whatever information you're looking for. It has the ability to self-service, so people that are looking for their particular their status of them as a user, whether they're getting their license removed, when they're getting it removed, which phase they're in, that sort of data. Deployment teams can see what users need when, once we have this work transformation complete, users getting new machines, what they need to be associated with, what tools they need, that can be used there. It does detailed tracking. You can look up things by user, by use case, by department, by leader. Whatever sort of HR data we have available, we can put that into the system and be able to slice and dice the data based on what you're looking for, what statuses you're looking for. It also provides users a hands-on learning of AppSheet, if they are using it, to know how big of a tool and what it can be used for in their lineup.
And one of the things I love about this the most is we take this and we build it inside a customer's environment. So it's not something where we take the data out of any customer environment, but we just use this tool within their environment and then we leave it with them. I think that's one of my favorite things about this tool just in general. We know that transformation will continue beyond what our team is capable of because you're going to have some long-term use cases. Maybe you're waiting for a software update that's going to happen sometime next year. But we train the project team and team members on how to use this tool and how to play with it. I think it's definitely one of my favorite things about it.
Just to add on to that, Kristen, as well, I think that the mind-blowing moment for me was when we finally had a way to see, okay, I'm a single user, but I have many use cases. And for a business, you're thinking about, okay, well, if I solve use case B, how many licenses does that free up? And using a spreadsheet, that is a tough thing to solve for, because how do we link different users to multiple use cases and assign, like, you need a database. Like, we're talking about a database tool here.
Yeah.
So the ability to have, like, hey, here's use case B, here's how many users are associated with that. And looking at it from the other direction of, since it's AppSheet and AppSheet can have different views based on the identity of the person that's logged in, if I can see the use cases that I myself as an employee am assigned to, I can see, okay, well, these are all the things that I'm reliant on Microsoft today for. These are the things the team is working on. These are the statuses of those things. These are the comments of those things. I can just have better visibility, right? It provides folks the visibility that they need. It shows how the spider web of things is all connected together without spending hours trying to figure that out every week through a spreadsheet. So just really happy that we have this tool. Sure, let's go ahead and check out a video.
Many companies want to optimize software costs by reducing their Microsoft Office spend, but it's a complex challenge. How do you know who to migrate without breaking critical business processes? That's why SADA developed Nexus Trace. It's a powerful tool that moves beyond simple usage data. It starts by tracking all of your technical dependencies and business use cases. You can see exactly which tools are required for specific tasks, and critically, which users are tied to them. The use case dashboard provides a 360-degree view, letting you analyze use cases by department, status, or business impact. You can drill down from the high-level chart into any specific process, like this SharePoint site, to see all of its related details and dependencies before making a migration decision. This all feeds powerful cross-dependent workflows. The license management dashboard connects everything. You can identify a user, review their specific usage data, and all their associated use cases, and then confidently manage their migration status directly, driving a clear, auditable process from pending to removal scheduled. With Nexus Trace, you can stop guessing. You can start making data-driven decisions to streamline your software, reduce costs, and accelerate work transformation.
All right. So that's a little bit of a sneak peek of what the tool looks like and some workflows around how it works. Like I mentioned, this is a tool that we have actively deployed at several customers that we're going through this process with right now. It helps us to get a better understanding of what's out there, what we're working on, what the statuses of different things are. So I just want to take a moment to ask the team, John, Kristen, if there's any other comments on this, or if we maybe want to give folks a moment to drop in your Q&As if you've got questions about this tool, how it works, specifics about how we're using it. Happy to address any questions that you have as well. But John, Kristen, any other notes on this topic here?
No, I think just what I love about it too is with each new deployment of this tool, we find new ways to improve it. Over the last 2 years, we went from one database now to two, and the two databases talk to each other. We're just constantly evolving this tool, and I love it because we're using it to fix our customers' problems.
Awesome. Well, if you've got any questions, feel free to drop those in the Q&A about that tool. But otherwise, we're going to go ahead and move on to our next topic on the agenda, which is the ever important data strategy. Kristen, why don't you tell us a bit about what we've got going on here?
Oh my gosh, data strategy is so important, and I'm so excited to talk about this. Thought this was a really great quote. Actually, one of our data engineer leads that a company without a data strategy is like a library where all the books are in random piles. Sure, the information exists, but good luck finding it before your competitor does. Just so true. We all have data in so many different places, but if you don't have a means or ways to use it, it's not as useful. So what is a data strategy? What are we talking about from SADA when we ask a team, do you have one? It is an overarching plan that defines how a company will use their data, specifically as a strategic asset to achieve its business goals. It is that blueprint for turning data from a burden into a competitive advantage. Everywhere we look, all of our customers have data just piled in different locations. But if we don't have a way of using that, the data just sits there and collects dust. So the biggest part of transformation is making sure that the data strategy that any company would have does align with your business goals. First and foremost, we need to protect sensitive data. More and more, we're seeing in the news that there's ways in which someone was able to obtain information or data from a company that they should not have been able to. So aligning this data strategy with your business goals would ultimately protect that sensitive data, making sure that you can have security measures in place so that that doesn't happen. It, of course, optimizes your operations. It streamlines processes and cuts costs for data-driven efficiencies. This one is huge, especially if you've got, I don't know, Chris probably knows some stories as well, but we had some customers they've spent like a day working on a single report just in Excel, and they do that once a month. So optimizing your operations is really important. It also lends itself to enable innovation. Trying to stay ahead of the competition and grow your market based on innovating with the use of your data is really important. And then learning how to scale and grow that. So we know designing scalable architectures that can handle the growing data volume. Your data is never gonna decrease. You're going to continue to accrue data as your business grows. If you're not harnessing it now, it's just going to get worse and be in more dispersed places. So we need to talk about scalability and growing that. And then, of course, most importantly, as far as work transformation is concerned, fostering that collaboration and efficiency. Data strategy should promote that self-service analytics. We know lots of customers who will take some information and download it to an Excel, manipulate it somehow in a dashboard, and then send it out to somebody else. Maybe they need a better way of doing that, as well as getting to real-time data. Thoughts, team? Anything to add? One?
So I think we see this in a bunch of different ways. Like when you talk about data strategy, and I just want to also say that I am not a data engineer. We have data engineers who are experts in this and can help you with making this make sense for your business. We're also not here to say that you need to migrate everything to Google. Like that's not our MO either. It's making sense of what is the business trying to achieve? What is the goal? Like we talked about in session 1. What is that apple tree on the hill? How do we want folks to be able to be working together, and how are we marching that direction? And then what is the data strategy that supports us to get there? If it's saying that, well, we have this data in this system and the workflow is we download it, we do an Excel workbook, and then we create a report and we then send that off to somebody else, is there a more efficient way of working? Is there a way that we can connect that data source to a tool, say Looker Studio, for example, if we're going the Google Workspace route, in order to get that report to be real time and not have to download and upload? Like, can we simplify steps in this process? And does the strategy support that? And if your tool is something else, say we've got a customer who their data visualization tool is Power BI. So it's not about how do we get data into Looker Studio. It's about how do we avoid creating so many Excel downloads and creating so much local Excel reporting, and get folks more comfortable using the approved data visualization tool, which is Power BI, in order to make the reports and connect to the data rather than like pulling it and using it every time. So a data strategy starts with, like, it doesn't have to be, what is the data warehouse or data lake tool set that we're using. It can be as simple as, what are the workflows? Like from the business end, we see what are the workflows that people are running through with data? Like, what are their touch points? Where is it coming from? Where is it going to? And does that make sense? Does it align with your data strategy and business goals as a company? I will say that work transformation is one of those projects where there is 1,000 ways to build this mousetrap. I don't think we will ever see a customer whose data strategy is the same as the next. Yeah. And that's how the world works. And so what we're here to do is to help you understand, like, what are folks doing with their data, and how does that align with your data strategy as a company, or does it not align, right? A lot of companies that we speak with today, they're trying to get away from the place where employees are downloading data locally on their machine, because we don't want data sitting on a laptop somewhere, right? We want to make sure that it's in a secure place and that we're interfacing with it in a secure way. So that's my 2 cents on this topic. Just wanted to kind of, clear some things up there from a change management perspective.
Yeah, anything to add, Jonathan?
Yeah, I was gonna add to that point about the security. Like, you have this secure data storage place, and then you let people just download it onto the machine and do whatever they want with it. Having a good data strategy and leaving those things in those tools that are secure provides better security for that data across the board.
Yeah, 100%. And if you don't have a data strategy, even going into a work transformation project, that's okay. Like Chris said, we have a whole team that is designed and set up to help you develop one if you're like, oh my gosh, I can't start a work transformation project without having this. It's no, you can do that in tandem together because we have teammates who do this with us. They do the discovery, they help you roadmap, they help you do implementation of support of what that looks like, as well as then just general ongoing optimization. So you don't have to have a data strategy in order to start work transformation, but it does need to be a topic of conversation within a work transformation project. Because as we look at the next slide, we talk about spreadsheets to strategies. From our database that we built earlier, our Lexis Trace, we find that, 75%. The guys will correct me if I'm wrong. At least 75% are all around Excel. No one wants to get rid of their Excel. I understand it's a great, incredible tool and has been for years. But sometimes it may not be the best solution for a long-term plan for your overall company. Talking about that big apple on the tree, maybe that's not where you want to go because spreadsheets is somewhat limited. We are also not saying that Google Sheets is the answer to your Excel spreadsheet. I don't know how many times we get into these work transformation conversations, and the assumption is made that we're trying to force everyone into Google Sheets. We try to quell that pretty early on because we know that Sheets was not meant to be an exact one-to-one Excel replacement. So data strategy is necessary to overcome the severe limitations of siloed manual Excel processes, because our goal, again, is to achieve a digital transformation. And to enable that transformation, we need to get out of those siloed Excel spreadsheets and start to leverage real-time data tools. And then we do want to work to avoid costly mistakes. Having that information on a laptop, let's say a laptop gets stolen, anything can happen with that data. So you want to mitigate organization risk and bolster efficiency by preventing system duplication. One, if you're downloading it out of a full system multiple times, that means that information at different real times is located somewhere else. Also, compliance failures. This is a great opportunity for us to partner with some compliance team members. Say again, as part of data strategy, what do you want people doing with your data? It does start to build trust with the data. Again, when you download any information somewhere, you have the opportunity of human error or human manipulation. And so when you're building trust, you want to make sure the quality and integrity as well as the governance frameworks are established so that you can trust that the data that and where it's coming from is good data and honest and true. That does ensure the output is transparent, fair, and compliant. And most importantly, if any organization is wanting to utilize AI in the future, data is your foundation to any AI success. If your data quality is not great, that means your output of that, whatever you're choosing to use, let's say it's Agentspace, it's Gemini and Drive, whatever that ends up being, will only be as good as your data is. So the integrity of your data is extremely important. So wanting to choose not to manipulate that as much as possible, but make connectors to wherever your secure sources are, would be your optimal solution. Any thoughts here, Chris or John?
Yeah, I think talking about that enabling transformation, taking like the use case mentioned previously where someone had to once a month go in and spend a day or half a day just processing that data so that someone could use it for that month. Imagine that data being connected and transformed in real time and being able to see an up-to-the-minute picture of what is actually happening at this moment, not what happened almost a month ago when it was last processed.
Agreed. It helps with better general decision making within the company or organization for sure.
Yeah, I'll second that by saying I think sometimes so I'll say two things about this. One, looking at data challenges of like in John's example, where somebody needs to download and manipulate some data and then send it or upload it somewhere. When we look at this from the business use case perspective, one of the first questions we'll ask is like, what are the requirements of this workflow? And when we start to detail those requirements, some folks will say, well, the requirement is I have to download it as Excel. I can't add it to a Google Sheet directly, so I have to download it as Excel. Then I have to do this manipulation. Then I have to send it as Excel to this other person or upload it into this system. And oftentimes where we look for transformation opportunities is like John said, shortcutting that of, well, is downloading as Excel really the requirement? Or is it a requirement because you need to be able to manipulate the data in some way and create a report? And if we gave you a different way to manipulate that data, a different tool that interfaces directly with that data, then downloading the data is no longer a requirement, right? Producing the report, producing the output is the requirement. That's and how do we get there without having to download it and move it and change it and do these things is oftentimes what we look for when we're trying to solve for these business use cases. A real example from my own world, just to give you one of these is allocations and utilizations. You know, we are all, the folks on this call, we're all assigned to customers. We all have utilization numbers that we need to make sure that we're providing to our customers to make sure that, you know, that they're getting the hours that we that they have purchased from us. And so two ways to look at, well, what are my allocations on this? I can wait for the email that comes out every Monday that says, here's your allocations for this week. Or I can go click on the Looker dashboard and see in real time how many hours that I used last week that were approved from my time card, and how much do I have to spend on this week based on the allocation that I have. I have real-time access to that data. Just, you know, shortcutting that. I don't need to wait for a report to come out every Monday when I can go look at it. So not to say that the data has to be migrated to Google. We've seen plenty of opportunities where systems, if they're not already Google friendly, like how do we then mirror that data in a way that it's usable with Google's tools, but maybe stays in the secure data storage platform that your company has decided it needs to reside in. So yeah, just some different examples of how we see this come to life. It's a very important topic. A lot of transformation boils down to, what is your data strategy? Where is data living? How are folks intended to interact with it? And then how can we help folks be more efficient with the data that they need to work with?
Yeah, and I also want to make one last clear point. We're not bashing on Excel by any means. It's a very, very powerful tool. If that is where your work process needs to live, that's entirely okay. But our job is to question whether the status quo is still Excel or not, so that it gets you to think about exactly what Chris is talking about. What is the purpose of what you're doing, and is that still how it should be done today? All right.
Let's move on to some ways that we see this manifest, some customer stories that we've seen as how folks do work transformation. So leaving the data space of the conversation for a moment, talking about general work transformation, like trying to reduce the number of duplicative tools that we have to, in our case, you know, go all in on Google Workspace. I was looking for ways that, how can I like describe this journey in one sentence? And I came across this quote you might recognize if you're a Lord of the Rings fan. You step onto the road, and if you don't keep your feet, there's no knowing where you might be swept off to. And I think we see that in work transformation sometimes, where, hey, if we don't keep our feet and understand what we're trying to achieve, what is that apple tree on the hill, we might end off in some weird, strange place surrounded by, you know, a dragon under the mountain, if you will. So we want to make sure that we know where we are, we know what we're doing, and that we at least have somewhat of a plan or somewhat of a thing that we're trying to accomplish. So these are three different ways that we've seen companies, and we've all been involved in projects that have taken this way. Like I said, there's like 1,000 different ways to build a mousetrap, of getting your business from, you know, dependent on both Microsoft Office and Google Workspace, and going as all in on Google Workspace as you can. So these are three different ways. We'll kind of talk through each of these. Okay, I'll give my co-hosts an opportunity to chime in with their own examples as well. But starting off with just the volunteer approach. So we've seen this where we say, hey, raise your hand if you'd like to have your Microsoft Office license removed. The challenge with this is that there's no sense of urgency. You know, why would I choose to have something taken away from me? And instead, and the other challenge here is that there's no what's in it for me. Like, what do I gain by having my Microsoft Office removed from me? This seems like it's purely negative. Like, why would I want to volunteer to have something taken away? Unless I'm like really excited about Google Workspace and I want to be an early adopter. And granted, there are definitely those people at every single business. You will get some volunteers, but we don't see a critical mass of people saying, of volunteering, of saying, let's all go, let's take this whole team, let's do this whole thing. That's very, very rare that we would ever see that happen.
Yeah, I think this usually works for like a single round. I know we've had some customers before that have chosen to make an attempt to do 3 or 4 different rounds of volunteers, but it really, you get one shot. There's not many people offering, and if so, it's usually less than 10.
Where I've seen this work, and I won't say the customer's name, but we're about customer stories, like where have we seen, what have we seen, what has worked.
Yes.
Where I've seen volunteer approaches work is when we set the deadline and say, hey, we are all going by this date. Here's a volunteer opportunity if you'd like to participate earlier, but we're going by this date. Like having both of those simultaneously, then you'll get some volunteers to sign up and say, okay, well, if we're going anyway, we might as well jump on the train early.
Yeah.
You still won't get a critical mass, not at least from what I've seen. Like you're still going to need to have some planned waves of some other things that we'll talk about here in the other 2 examples.
Yeah.
But we used to, and actually, Kristen, I'll just say one more thing and I'll pass it over to you. We used to think that this was just like the way to go all the time. Like when we talked about the history of work transformation, we used to think that, hey, if we provide enough enablement and enough training, people will want to say, okay, please take it away. I'll go to Google. And that just didn't get us to where we wanted to go. So we think that volunteer as your only approach, you're going to have trouble getting some traction there. But volunteer as part of a, hey, we're all going by this date anyway, and oh, by the way, if you want to go early, you can. That can still work. That can still get some folks to sign up.
I've seen people incentivize this as well with like, ooh, we'll give you a paid day off. I think that was the best one I saw.
That's pretty cool.
I've also seen it where like, if you get your whole department off, we'll do like, we'll provide lunch or something. Always providing incentives is great. Where I think there is some tiny bit of problem is if you have a technical requirement, like you're forced to use a very specific application that has a Microsoft Office requirement to it, but you want to move, you're kind of stuck in that in between where you don't really get to volunteer because you're forced into using a specific application that requires it as well.
Yeah. And I can't emphasize enough that the importance of that sense of urgency. Like, hey, when it's right around the corner, when you know that date's coming, that's when people are going to start paying attention. They'll start showing up to trainings. They'll start taking their use cases seriously because they know that this thing is about to happen. So hugely important there. The what's in it for me, this is where we talk about some of the like, hey, this might be an opportunity to change the way that you're working a bit. Something's been going the same way for the past 20 years and you think there's got to be a better way. In a lot of cases, there probably is. So what's in it for me in this instance for volunteers might be saying, hey, I think I want to try to figure out a better way to do this thing. So that could be a what's in it for me there as well.
Yeah.
Ripping off the Band-Aid. We've seen this one a couple of times.
Yep.
Where the decision will be made to say, hey, we are uninstalling Microsoft Office on this day for everybody. And that has some pros and cons, to say gently. Pro is, yeah, you're gonna remove a lot of Microsoft Office licenses on that day. It's gonna happen. There's not gonna be a lot of stragglers. The con is, you're not bringing people along with the process. There's folks who will want to participate and help to solve problems. And if we just say it's all going away, that feels a bit aggressive. Kristen, I think you've worked with some customers that have taken this approach.
And it worked culturally, to be honest. The one that we did do this for, they reached the highest amount of removals, which was about 92%. But it was the harshest approach I'd seen anyone take, but their culture was primed for it. Like, it worked for them. That organization was used to things like this. But the other con is you don't know what you're going to break. And you kind of have to be prepared for, could be anything.
And I think there can be, like, you can take the rip off the Band-Aid approach inside of this last one, which I think is the one that I personally think is the best of these. Like, you can have an individual team. I've seen like VPs at companies saying, okay, my group of people, like, we're just going to rip the Band-Aid off for my group of people. I've got 50 people that report to me. We're just going to do it. And that, like Kristen said, tends to yield the highest amount of removals, but also produces the largest amount of friction, which is okay if you know what that friction is going to be. If you know that the date for the Band-Aid ripoff is, 60 days from now, then you have 60 days to say, okay, if we removed all of it tomorrow, what would break?
Yeah.
And look at that from your own VP area or your own director group or whatever it is. I think the rip off the Band-Aid approach can work depending on the culture of the team that is taking that approach.
Agreed. And then, to be honest, we didn't have a good amount of follow-up to see, well, how many licenses ended up being added back later. So we did kind of miss that bit of information after we'd ripped off the Band-Aid. I don't think it was a lot.
This last one then, line of business ownership, I think we've seen a lot of success with, where VP areas, directors, other leaders can participate in that removal journey. So the way that this tends to work is we would look to those VPs to say, okay, you have 100 Microsoft licenses inside of your area. On this date, though, the cost of goods, the cost of running your area of the business will transfer on to you. So like whatever that license cost is going to get passed through to that VP. And in order to reduce your spend, let's work with the work transformation team to see what we can transfer over, to see what we can move over, what workflows we can adjust, how many people actually need to keep it within your area. Folks tend to get engaged there, right? When we start to say, the business is moving this direction, we're going to move as much as we can. You, VP group, director group, whatever you are, get to sort of own that part of the journey for your own people. You're at the steering wheel for your own folks. You also take accountability for your own folks if you need to keep 100% of your licenses. Some organizations like this approach because using the tool that we mentioned earlier, we can put these groups side by side and show percentages across the business of like which groups are removing how many licenses and what are the roadblocks. Which groups have the most use cases that are preventing license removals. So this like line of business area, line of business ownership tends to work well. I think interestingly among the team here, like just speaking for myself and John and Kristen here, we've seen different approaches to like, I've seen success, Kristen, mixed areas here around like removal waves for VPs. Like, do you remove by department or by VP, or do you schedule removal waves based on the overall business and like use cases that are resolved and the individuals that are associated with those? So there's like different schools of thought, different strategies we can take. And I'd say there's probably not one size fits all. Probably it depends on the business that you run and how folks operate. But the line of business ownership can go with the use case mitigation, the ownership of the licenses afterwards, and the removal waves if we choose to go that route as well.
Yeah, and I think even a combination of any of those. Always allowing for a volunteer wave. It's always nice. It just gets the low-hanging fruit out of the way. But using that data from the line of business standpoint to say, hey, like, especially if a company's got usage data, hey, we don't see you're using it. You don't have any reason to have it. All of those data points lends itself really well to that line of business. But I agree with Chris in that when you put that business ownership or someone that is a VP or over a line of business that says, okay, I've looked at the data and this does make sense, it gets the rest of their team buying into the same thing versus feeling this is something they feel that bestowed upon them, that they are being taken away from something they're so used to.
Yeah, I think like Kristen said, like I think that the secret, the message behind the message here is that there's probably room for all three of these in a single project. Like, there's probably some room for volunteers. There's probably some room to rip off the Band-Aid with certain areas of the business and just get it done, depending on the appetite for change there. And then there's likely a lot of room for line of business ownership as well, in terms of our strategy, in terms of the cost, in terms of just how we run the project in general. John, anything to add for any of these here before we pass it over to the people?
Nothing specific other than that with the tools that we have available, we can use all these different processes to get to a goal of license removal.
Yeah, agreed. And I think a goal is great to have. What our does gives you whether the goal that you've set for your organization is achievable or not based on current discovery and information. That's the other reason I do love the tool that we've built.
You bring up a good point there. Let's talk about goal setting for a moment, because I think it does have to do with any of these strategies. Your business probably, either you have a number in mind or you want to be able to get to a number in mind of like, what should my goal be? Or I've got a goal already. And we've seen goals. I think the lowest goal I've ever seen was 50% reduction of, I want to reduce 50% of the Microsoft Office licenses in my business. And the highest we've seen was 100. Like, we're just going to remove it all. I think there is, it's obviously the higher number you get, the harder it is. I'm not going to sit on the call and tell you what your number should be, because I think every business is different in what is achievable. What I will say is that most companies are you're kind of able to achieve like 50 to 60% if you're careful and you're thoughtful and you're working through some of the things we're discussing here. But if you want to get into that like 70%, 80% range, that's when we really need to look at the use cases and the workflows that your folks are participating in. To get over that 70% mark, there is some transformation that needs to occur. There are some things that need to change in the way that your business operates. And that's the work that we all love doing. I show up to work every day because I want to solve a problem that I've never seen before and that I haven't attempted to solve in the past. That's the stuff that excites us. And that's why we do this every day. I think if I were to offer any advice on goal setting, if you have the opportunity, let's break up the discovery phase from the removal phase. Let's find out what's out there. Let's do some discovery on what's possible. And as an output of that, set a goal together and say, here's what's in your environment. Here's what we think can be mitigated, what we can't. Let's set a goal that we all agree is achievable. And then let's go and exceed it. Like, let's take the strategy of under promising and over delivering. Like, we know we can get to this number, and then let's go beat that number and everybody's incredibly happy, right? So that would be my only advice. If you have the opportunity, separate the goal from the removal. Like, do your discovery phase first, figure out what's actually possible, use that information to set your goal. And we're not talking about a year-long thing here. We're talking about a few months, 2-3 months of discovery. You'll learn a lot about your business. You'll learn a lot about like what is an immovable rock versus something that's like got some flex to it. And
I had one customer that had a great goal, and it wasn't even a difficult goal, but they found they had a technical requirement for every single person at their organization, and they could not remove a single one until that was resolved. I think that was the most gut-wrenching one I've ever experienced thus far, because they did not end up removing any, and they had to push that transformation to a later date.
And we might have talked about that a little bit in session 1, but in case you missed that or if we didn't cover it well enough, like, we do recognize, and one of the first things we also try to segment here when we start our transformation project is there is a difference between technical use cases and business use cases, where those technical use cases, there's some type of hard requirement. For example, got a use case that a customer working with currently. They have software that exports an XLS binary file, not an XLSX like we're all used to, an XLS, which, yes, if you're doing the math in your head, is a 20-year-old file format. But this software there is no other option, right? It exports as this is a critical piece of software. If this software doesn't work, then their business has, like, there's imminent risk that can occur. So that is a technical requirement. Like that tool, XLS only. We need to figure out what is the mitigation strategy for this. Like, how do we how do we continue this thing working, but still, reduce dependencies where we can. Whereas a business requirement would be like what we were talking about earlier in this session, where, hey, Kristen runs a monthly report. She's got to grab this data. She downloads it. She manipulates it. She creates a report. She sends it off. That's a business use case. I have to make a report. There might be a technical use case like hidden in there of like, well, how does the data get exported? How is the data connected? Like that might be a component of that. But the use case of building the report is a business use case. So during your discovery phase, figuring out what are the technical use cases, starting there, who are the owners of these applications, who controls what these like can and cannot do, what the permissions are, and then mapping out also, okay, well, what are all the business use cases as well? Like who's impacted by those? Understanding both sides of that picture will help you set a better goal of like what's actually achievable, what is a hard requirement versus something that's maybe a bit more flexible.
Yep.
I'm sorry, I'm like lecturing now. I feel like about a podium. Apologies. It's really passionate. It's fun stuff. We love this work that we do.
It is exciting. Well, that's a good segue to open it up to any Q&A. We have any, I noticed today. Sorry, I got excited.
Oh my goodness, we're just too many cooks in the kitchen.
Do we have any Q&As today? I've been a bit surprised. We haven't seen any come up so far.
I haven't seen any Q&As come through.
I know.
We'll hang out here for a few minutes. If you've got any questions, any topics that we didn't discuss that, hey, maybe we sparked your curiosity on something, drop a question in the Q&A. We're happy to cover that. We'll give you a moment to pop those in there.
If
While
for
you
whatever
do,
reason the QA tool is unfamiliar, the chat works as well.
oh, awesome. Thank you, Keenan. Appreciate that.
Chat or the Q&A tool are your two options. You can
Well,
also be kind and let us know if you like this topic so far, so at least you know you're out there.
yeah, give us some emojis. Let us know if this is helpful for you, if you enjoyed the topic. I will also say for next week, just want to tease a little bit. Thanks for the responses there, folks. Glad to hear you're enjoying this stuff. If you don't have any questions and you're curious about what's next, I do want to tease next week. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. We haven't even had the session yet, and I already know that next week is going to be my favorite session of this 4-part series. We are taking the transformation challenge together next week. So it's going to be a guided problem-solving session. We're going to take you through some of the challenges that we've seen, some of the common things we see. Education is a huge part of what we do still, right? There's just, if you don't know what you don't know, then it's hard to make any changes. So some education next week, some guided problem-solving activity. It's going to be a lot of fun. We'll give you some resources to follow along. We'll, some of the things you look forward to is like, well, what about like macro conversion and, opening Excel files, CSV stuff. So some exciting things there. We'll talk about effective strategies for migrating from OneNote to Google Docs. We've done some projects there. We built a tool to do this because there hadn't been one in the past. Really excited about the work that we did there. Just, hey, in case you haven't seen, there's some really cool stuff out there like the mind map functionality, Notebook LM. We'll talk about how that integrates into some of these transformation challenges like migrating from OneNote, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean, we did it this week. We teased AI a little bit, saying that your data is important. So we're doing a little bit more with a little bit of AI next week.
And then a whole lot more on week 4 as well then.
Oh my gosh, yeah, so excited. Arthur, I saw your question. Great question. How do you obtain information on Nexus Trace? Reach out to your account manager. We could look at and have a conversation around how we can get that either like set up in your environment, train you on it, all those good things. So it'd be kind of a discovery services type thing.
Yeah, happy to help deploy that. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you. Oh, I see another one. Edgar says, any specific tooling we'll be using for next week's activity? Everything's going to be based in Google Workspace. So we will be using like Gemini for some of the things. So just your Google Workspace account, just bring that along. Make sure you've got access to everything else.
Even the app sheet, like we usually generally just utilize the app sheet that's part of Workspace license too. So we try to stay within our space. We do love to bring over our GCP friends.
It's true too. All right, everybody. Well, thank you for coming by today. Appreciate you being here. If you're checking out the recording, thank you so much for checking this session out. This is going to do it for week 2.
Yep.
Hope to see you next week. Take care, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you on the next one.